So yesterday we stopped here in Sangam literature, where we find environmental ethical notes in the great epics and also minor epics. As I was mentioning yesterday, all these epics were written by monks belonging to the religion called Jaina, Samana, Jainism. So they were focusing their attention on 5 great principles: ahimsa, non-violence. That is the first environmental ethical principle, ahimsa, non-violence. The second is satya, known as the truth force or truthfulness. In other words, aram, righteousness. Jesus also mentions witnessing to the truth. That is why I came. He was talking to Pontius Pilate when he was mentioning, I came to witness to the truth. So that is the truth for satya. The third is asatya, that is not stealing. Stealing means you don't damage other people's property, and also you don't damage creation. So it is a very good environmental ethical principle. The fourth one is aparigraha, that is non-possession, renunciation. In theology we call it kenosis, which means self-emptying. St. Paul wrote in Philippians chapter 2, God did not hang on to his glory, but he abandoned his glory and he became human being. Not only human being, he became a slave. Not only slave, he became a criminal to be put to death on the cross. See, God himself shows how to self-empty. So today we need that, because we fill our empty hearts with consumption, greed, violence, fame, glory, possessions, because we are empty inside. So when you are empty inside, you want to fill in the junk. Unfortunately, today we fill the waste inside, full of waste. Kuppatoti. So aparigraha is a very good ethical principle. When you learn that we have to fill good stuff inside, we have to learn knowledge, wisdom, scriptures, what great people tell us, Buddha, Mahavira, Jesus Christ, Mahatma Gandhi. There are so many beautiful books available today. In Tamil literature, you have got so many beautiful books written by great seers like, what is his name? Vadiya Pullai Kandabodallam Vadinen. That is a... correct, yeah. Vallala. And Thiruvasagam writer Manika Vasagar, Tirumular, Appar Sundarar, Ramanujar. There are so many great Indian philosophers who talked about environmental ethics. For example, Manikavasagar, Vanagi, Mannagi, Valiyagi, Voliyagi, Unagi, Uyiragi. In other words, he talks about the whole creation is the revelation of God. The soil is the revelation of God. Water, air is the manifestation of God. So when you are spitting on the soil, you are not spitting on the soil, you are spitting on the very face of God. When you pollute water, you are not polluting water bodies, you are polluting God's face, God's body. See, environmental ethics, beautifully written by our ancestors. I'm talking about some 1500 years ago, Manikavasagar wrote. So the last ethical principle is Brahmacharya, the fifth one. Brahmacharya means celibacy. Of course, you and me, we are all celibates. You are going to be celibates. So it is good for the planet. We are already 8 billion people. Imagine you go and get married and you get kids. You are adding your kids to the already existing 8 billion people. When you examine the history of the church for the past 2000 years, there were millions of priests, millions of bishops, hundreds and thousands of popes, and multi-million sisters. Today's statistics is there are 4,400,000 priests on the planet, 10 lakh sisters on the planet, 5,000 bishops on the planet. There are 130, 160 or 200 plus cardinals, 2 popes. Imagine all these people gotten married. Imagine millions of priests before us, they also got married and gotten children. Today the world population will be 10 billion people. 10 billion people. Luckily, we are only 8 billion people. And there is no enough resources for 8 billion people. So at least we have limited 2 billion people just to balance the carrying capacity of the earth. Yes. Now you imagine that the fifth ethical principle, Brahmacharya, is doing good to the planet Earth. So these are the 5 great ethical principles on which all these major epics, minor epics have been written. So I think the environmental ethical consciousness was born at least 3,000 years ago. They have been talking about environmental ethics. So in the same line of environmental ethics, 2,000 years ago, one young Jew known as Jesus came to preach environmental ethics. Jesus was an ecologist. He was a geologist. He was a biologist. He was a preacher of environmental ethics. Also, preacher of agrarian theology. We didn't give importance in this kind of thought. Rather, we took him as a spiritual leader, one who came to preach love and justice, salvation. So we have taken a different route, ignoring his environmental efforts. His life was integral. He was a spiritual man. At the same time, he was talking about the material life. He was talking about ordinary life. He was not only talking about lofty ideals like grace and salvation, redemption, forgiveness. No, he was talking about birds, lilies of the field. Look at the wheat field. It is ready for harvest. He was talking about snakes. Be prudent like snakes. Be innocent like doves. Jesus canonized two saints on the same day. They are not humans. They are snake and doves. They are the doctors and martyrs of the church. You know today, who is the patron saint for prudence? According to Jesus, snake. Learn prudence from snake. Jesus himself canonized. Now, who is the patron saint for innocence? Doves, pigeons. Jesus himself canonized. Jesus never canonized any human, only animals and plants. Learn from the fig trees. Learn from the fig trees. So Jesus was the greatest teacher on environmental ethics. The Bible has hundreds and thousands of environmental ethical notes. We didn't look into that text at all. For example, Gospel of St. John, chapter 10, is a beautiful, beautiful text on how to conserve and preserve all species on earth. It re-echoes Arthasastra. The whole chapter re-echoes Arthasastra of Chanakya's. See, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Why Jesus talks about sheep very often? You should ask that question as the students of environmental ethics. You know why? In Judaism, you know the Passover meal. They celebrate every year. Passover. What is the Passover meal consisting of? Unleavened bread, bitter herbs, roasted lamb. Roasted lamb. So before Jesus, there were about 2,000 years past. They have been celebrating Passover meal. Hundreds and thousands of sheep were massacred, butchered for a religious festival. Even we do the same thing on Sundays. Sunday is the day of butchering of fish, chicken, pigs, bulls. The violence is pushed to the extreme on Sundays and feast days. Just you celebrated St. Francis of Assisi's feast just a couple of days ago. In sermon you must have heard brother fish, sister chicken, brother goat, sister lamb, all that thing you heard in the sermons. But when you came to the table, all the brothers and sisters are there, already fried and grilled and butchered and ready for festival. Christmas. What about Christmas? You go to the crib, one side, you look, that beautiful animals giving shelter and warmth to baby Jesus. There are sheep, there are cows, there are chickens, there are shepherds. But after Mass, when you come home, what happens? All those creatures you saw in the crib already massacred. And they are fried and they are butchered and they are grilled, they are cooked and they are on the table. So that is what our lifestyle is all about. One side we speak one thing, but our actions are far removed from our thoughts. Good thoughts, good words, good actions. That can be the best environmental ethical foundation. But here we are distorted. We have one thought, but in action, already there is a friction, there is the confrontation. That is sad. So that is why Jesus is obsessed with the sheep. He is a merciful teacher, practicing empathy. You know, Jesus is talking about empathy in one place. Learn from me, I am meek and humble of heart. Learn from me, I am empathetic and humble of heart. Tamil word is always beautiful. Even English word empathy is not giving full meaning. In Tamil, kanivu. Irakkam is different. You know what? Jesus went still further, that is on the empathetic route. So far, other teachers were talking only about compassion, mercy. That is an old style. Even Bible says, be compassionate as your heavenly Father is compassionate. That is an Old Testament style. That does not apply to Jesus. Jesus went still further. Empathy. That is what today we have to look into. But today we have stopped in compassion. We celebrated Year of Mercy some 3 years ago. But what about Year of Empathy? It is not on the scene at all. If you want to understand Jesus' mission, you need to really understand what empathy is all about. That is much deeper environmental note. I would say compassion and mercy is very shallow environmental, ethical emotion, but deep environmental, ethical emotion is empathy. Kanivu. So that's why Jesus told, learn from me. I am meek and humble. In other words, Jesus is giving 2 BA programs, MA programs, and PhD programs. No university is giving you degree for empathy and humility. Only Jesus is giving. He's telling, come to my university. I will teach you what is empathy and humility. That's why he came, he taught. This is the teaching on empathy and humility. When you put empathy, everything we take into consideration. Compassion stops at only living things. Compassion is good, don't throw it away. Mercy is good. It is applied to living creatures. As I told you yesterday, Monera, Protista, fungi, plants, animals. It is applied to the living parts of the natural world. But empathy takes you deep into the abiotic parts of the natural world, non-living parts of the natural world. That's why Jesus, you remember when he was tempted in the wilderness by the Satan, the first thing Satan was asking, why don't you turn those rocks into bread? We can eat it. Jesus says, no, I wouldn't do that. Rocks are non-living. Today we are using it as a commodity. But we should see rocks as community to which we belong. Rock is the foundation of all life on the planet. The weathering of the rock produced soil, soil produced grass, grass produced food, food produced life. See, at last, rock is the provider. Everything goes back to the rock. So this is the ultimate truth. So Jesus is telling, I will not turn rocks into business. These rocks are doing or performing their role for the common good of the planet. These rocks are producing weather, climate, rain clouds, which is known as the water cycle or hydrologic cycle, which turns it into evaporation, condensation, precipitation, runoff, infiltration. All these processes are possible because of rocks. We have removed rocks foolishly and kept it in the churches, cathedrals, temples, houses, seminaries, offices. They don't belong there. They are crying out loud, please take us out. You have put us in prison as if we have committed some crime. What crime did we do? St. Paul puts it so beautifully. The whole creation is crying out loud. They are in the birth pain, groaning pain. They are waiting for their own liberation. That is what St. Paul is writing the letter to the Romans, I think chapter 8, he's writing there. The whole creation is groaning and waiting for their own liberation. Look at your rock just under your feet. Look at your rock under your feet right there. Environmental ethical note, environmental ethical question is asking, is it right that these stones are heaped up in this room? Your question should be very, very critical. They belong outside. They have a role to play. They have to create weather, but we have removed and put it under our feet. So you must be feeling, really it is wrong. Let us liberate them. Let us take all those stones and take out and throw them out. So after the environmental questioning, humanity should be ready to act and restore those stones back to the mountain. Because today we have tampered with the role of the stones. That's why there is no rain. No rain clouds. Monsoon failure. Registering less rainfall. All this happening, all this ecological crisis happening because we removed those stones from the mountains and put them in the churches, cathedrals, temples, and houses and offices and seminaries. So today we need to return them. You will return them if you look those stones under your feet with the empathy. Now you have just to look those stones with no feeling. Just look one more time. Can you look the stones under your feet one more time, all of you? Bend down and look at them. Okay, some people look it with compassion. Some people look it with some other emotion. But when you look at with the empathy, kanivu, then everything comes to light. Then you feel sorry. You cry. Really your hearts are moved. Oh, you belong outside under the sun. You want to see your beloved every day. Sun symbolizes God. All these stones were looking God every day. And they were feeling so happy to be united with the beloved. But now you have removed them. They don't see sun anymore. And they are in hell or in darkness. So when you look with empathy, even stone, you want to save it. Even stone includes in the salvific plan of God. Even a rock needs salvation. Soil needs salvation. It is not that only humans need salvation. All parts in the natural world, the biotic needs salvation. That is what Jesus is doing here in the chapter 10. I mean, the sheep symbolize here as the biotic part, a living part of the natural world. Also you can consider a biotic also. You can include here. The second text, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. So because of empathy, Jesus could talk like that. If you don't look at with empathy, Jesus looks crazy. Why does he talk like that? He is mad. But when you see with the empathetical emotion, then you begin to appreciate Jesus. I think we need to study and focus what empathy is all about in order to make a very strong environmental ethical deliberations. Now I am going to talk about the biblical foundation of environmental ethics. These are the two texts I noted. The first text is already I mentioned yesterday. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. See, for God so loved the world. That is the word on which you need to focus. So far we have been reading it differently. For God so loved the humans that he gave his one and only Son. That is how we tend to read. But here, world means the abiotic and the biotic, the non-living and the living factors or parts of the natural world, which includes humans. Humans are not excluded there. They are included in the word called world. So that lays a foundation for environmental ethics. God came to save the whole of creation. He is not a God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, as we used to understand. He is also God of Rachel, Sarah, Agar, Ruth, and he is also God of snakes, pigeons, birds. He is also God of soil, rocks, water, air. In other words, he is the God of creation. So far we have been calling God of Abraham, God of Isaac. No, he is God of creation. Nobody is excluded. So that is what this text is all about. John 3:16, the most important text for our subject, environmental ethics. The second text comes from Gospel of St. Mark, chapter 16, verse 15. He said to them, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation." So far we have been reading this text. He said to them, "Go into the humans and preach the gospel to all creation." Very anthropocentric reading for the past 2000 years. The world again includes humans. Humans are not excluded. They are included there. So, but we need to preach the good news to whole of creation. But what we have been doing for the past 2000 years, only humans. All our parish establishment, they cater the needs of only one species, humans. Our masses, our sacraments, our mission in the parish is biased only to humans. The parish priest is not at all worried when the mountain is destroyed in his own parish. He thinks that is something else. The parish priest not at all interested when the soil is being removed from his own compound, when animals and plants are driven to the brink of extinction. He doesn't even care. When the farmers commit suicide, when agriculture is being destroyed, when the land is being sold to the multinational corporations in his own parish, he says Mass, he recites Rosary, and he is practicing music for the next Sunday, and he is preparing for a beautiful sermon for next Sunday. Preach the gospel to all of creation. Recently we celebrated the season of creation, starting from September 1 till October 4th, the feast of St. Francis of Assisi. It's almost 34 days dedicated to the season of creation. Pope Francis is so involved in caring for our common home. This Pope has empathy. I see empathy in Pope Francis. That is why he could write such a brilliant document, the encyclical called Laudato Si. If he had only compassion and mercy, he could not have written so remarkably. But he had the deeper emotion called empathy. That's why he could produce such a bioethical book. In Laudato Si, he talks about the interdependency. He talks about the value of each species. The document is divided into 6 chapters, which I am going to talk about it later on, but it is just an introduction note I wanted to add here, because preaching to creation is very important, and Laudato Si is teaching how to preach the good news to the whole of creation. Thank you. We'll come back.